Hey, good people. Grits or cream of wheat? Who the hell is racist? Does anyone ever ask if they touch your hair?
Black Like Me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Black Like Me.
Hey there, Black Like Me podcast listeners and family members. You know, in the midst of such trying times, it's exciting to have some glimpses of hope and some bright news to share. Our podcast has just been supported by 3 new patrons. Aunt Teresa Kudo from Florida comes in at the grit level, and then Christine Bradford and Justin Martin both have come in at the Black Icebreaker level. I just want you 3 to know I appreciate you. Aunt Teresa, Christine, Justin, thank you. In these crazy times of uncertainty, to get 3 new patrons within 1 week is just really exciting. So I want you all to know I appreciate you. And to anyone else out there, if you support us at the grits level, you get a shout out by name on Black Like Me also. You're going to enjoy this episode. You know, I don't know if I have stated this enough, but on Thursday nights, I do Black Like Me podcast live. I just call it Black Like Me Live. Last week, I did one at 6:30 and 8:30 Central Time, and I'm going to do one this week at 6:30 and 8:30 Central Time. I don't know if I'm always going to do 2 a week, but you know, at least for the next few weeks, I'll try it. But please put that on your schedules and have exciting guests, because sometimes I want to talk to people about current issues and not wait to get them in the studios and get everything all edited, produced, and then uploaded. So last week I had a conversation with a former white police officer. He's a fellow pastor now, but he's a former white police officer. He has served in Indiana and in Minnesota. We had an incredible discussion. In just a few days, we had about 6,000 views on Facebook Live. And we've been doing some talking offline, but his name is Chad Melton. And he's just been really open to talk about how Black Like Me podcast has been a resource for him in thinking through how he went about his work and parts of his life all wrong. I think it's honest. I think it's vulnerable, and is what we need folks who want to be white allies to do and to study and to become. So you're going to enjoy this vulnerability. I love the fact that he accepted my challenges, and he's demonstrating that true transformation of society in terms of race relations happens with our own personal transformation. So please take a listen, learn, lean in, and once you've listened, share it, and then share it some more, because people need to hear conversations like these. So please listen to this, and I hope to see you on Facebook Live on Thursday at 6:30 and 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And so I'm really glad to have you here. For the month of May, I'm trying something new on Thursday nights. I've been trying Black Like Me Live, because the time that it takes to see a current issue, get the appropriate speaker, record it, produce it, edit it, it could be 3 weeks. And so I've created this space on Thursday nights. It's going so well, I'll let you know I'm going to do it in June also. This is the first time I've dropped 2. So I'm doing one at 6:30 and I'm doing one at 8:30 tonight. So today, well, let me just tell you, tonight at 8:30, I'm going to be talking with Harry Hawkins. And he is a new Afrofuturist author. And he's talking about his new book that's called The Lives of the Demigods. That's going to be a whole nother discussion. But listen, we're just going to be asking other people to come on in. So I see people coming and they're waving, and my producer's on. So he's going to be sending me comments and questions that you may have. But my guest today is Chad. Chad is a fellow pastor. He hails from a lot of places. He referred to himself as just sort of a geographical mutt. Born in DC, moved to Minnesota, went to high school and graduated in Kansas City, went to the Marine Corps. He looks like a Marine. And I mean that with all respect, bro. And then moved to South Indiana, where his wife is from. And we met because he was a listener of my Black Like Me podcast. And so, but he's also a former police officer. So I need to talk to someone who's a fellow pastor, because that means he's not going to lie to me, but someone who's a former cop and they're white, to just help us just put our stuff. So listen, start tagging people, start letting people know we're talking, let them know we got a white cop, and we're gonna ask the hard questions. So I'm trying to keep my stuff up. I'm gonna put my chat on, producer, so that I can see you when you are saying questions. So producer, I can certainly do that. Chad, how are you doing tonight, man?
Good, yeah. Got the family all together. It's been a pretty good weekend so far. I'm finally taking vacation for the first time, so in a long time. So it feels pretty good.
That's good. And listen, I know you might be a little nervous being here. I mean, this is live. We're streaming to Facebook. We're talking about some controversial stuff, but I got to let you know, bro, I really appreciate the fact that you're here and that you're talking with me, because America's in distress, man. Our hearts are hurting. Folks are divided. We know the week's events, so we're not going to even go back and recap it all. But I will say this. There's this book ending that took place with this Amy Cooper threatening to call the police. And she actually did call the police on this gentleman in Central Park, knowing that the fear that would stoke in the hearts of Black people, and lied and trumped stuff up. And then that's juxtaposed with George Floyd, and this unnecessary, senseless, brutal, ugly, inhumane murder. And this man is on the ground pleading for his life, saying, I'm going to die. And so I just think seeing both of those, thinking about what has happened historically with white women, and back to slavery time, back to times on plantations, just accusations about what Black men did. And then this police officer, I feel like it put the community in panic. And I feel like for the first time, Chad, in probably 2.5 months, something scared the shit out of pastors more than COVID-19, or people, Black people, more than COVID-19. And it was a cell phone and a forgery case that gets you arrested and you wind up dead. I mean, come on, Charles Manson lived for how long in prisons in California? Ed Gein, Gacy in Illinois, Dahmer. These folks got a trial and they got to live in jail. Floyd never got to jail, never got to prison. So I got to pause right there and just breathe for just a minute and just say, you ready to jump in, bro?
Yeah, I think the emotions are high too with the whole COVID-19 thing, like you mentioned. Like there's already a sense of unrest and panic, and then you throw this murder, I don't know if you saw. You called it right. I don't know if you saw my Facebook post earlier, right? When I'm like putting my kids to bed the other night, and I'm just like looking over them, and I was just watching you and Anthony having that conversation, and so it was after that I just put something out on Facebook, and it was just what I was feeling at the time and my prayers at the time, and I'm just like, I don't have to have conversations with my kids like you and Anthony would.
Right.
To be completely
honest. Yes. No. You're right. And I remember saying to you, but I want you to have talks with your kids.
Yeah.
I certainly get what you're saying, not how to protect yourself, but you're right. You're so right, man. So let me ask you this, Chad. One of our fellow pastors just jumped in, and he just asked, why do police officers respond to Black men so aggressively? So I guess we're jumping right in it, man. I guess so. Again, you're not speaking for all police officers, but I just got to tell you this, Chad. So often we get asked to speak for all Black people. So for the next 30 minutes, I just need you to speak for all white people. And and if white people get mad, we got you. If white people get mad, we got you, man. Yeah. But generally speaking, man, what's going on with this militarization of policing? I mean, you're in the Marine and you're in the police force. Yeah. You told me you rode for 40 hours with somebody. That's like a work week. And you were given a badge, a gun, and said, go police the community. Are you serious? Are you serious?
I'm not even joking. I'm not even kidding. Eventually, I went to the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, but my first job, small town, That was it. Like, I rode around with my brother-in-law at the time. By the way, I'm one of those divorced pastors, so you can do with that with what you will. But so that was
I gotta let you go now. I can do it you being a white cop, but you're divorced.
Yeah, right.
And we're having some technical difficulty.
I'm just messy, right? My life is messy, and there's nothing. Anyway, so but that was it. I rode around with my then brother-in-law. And he kind of showed me the streets a little bit, which is really super small town. And then it was like, here's the keys, here's your gun. And then there was a jailbreak, like my first night all by myself. And I'm like, oh, I don't even know how you respond to that, right? Like 3 guys busted out of the jail. So that was it. And eventually I went through the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, but I had no education at all.
Mm-hmm.
So there are states out there where law enforcement, so Minnesota, here's the thing, like Minnesota requires a degree unless you've got reciprocity, because you've been able to work in another state for so many years. You can take the test and you can get hired on in Minnesota without a degree. But by and large, everybody has some kind of college education that's serving. That's not the case in other states. And I don't know if they've changed since then, but that was a state I started in. No education was necessary.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this. Someone's pushing this question. It's a good one. So why do police officers respond to Black men so aggressively?
Yeah. And
I know there's nothing every police officer does, but the question is, it's like, from 0 to 60, there's a timer, less than 17 seconds. What's going on? Why is there such an aggressive response when a Black male has a police called on him?
Yeah. So I can share my experience, right? And
Sure.
This came after years of reflecting on it.
Sure.
I wouldn't have recognized it at the time. Like, I would not have told you while I was serving that for my first 10 years as a cop that I was responding differently. But after the glass was finally shattered and I saw the inherent bias that I had even within myself, which was, by the way, when I met Jesus. But when that happened, I realized that the bias that I had. And so what would happen was I'd get a call, whatever I was responding to. And if I knew the person and I knew they were a dangerous person, I had a certain level of intensity that, I would go in expecting.
Right.
And I was one of those guys that would run through about every scenario in my head as on my way to a call. So I didn't step into something I didn't see coming.
Right.
As the best that I could. Right. If I didn't know who the assailant was at all, I had a different level that I would respond. Right. So if it was somebody that was a known threat, I would respond here in my mind, and that would be how I got out of the car and how I engaged with them right off the bat. And if it was somebody I didn't know at all, I didn't have any information other than just somebody was assaulting or assailing somebody, right? I would have a different level, still concerned. But once I realized it, I was inherently responding closer to the level of a known dangerous assailant when I realized that the suspect was a Black male. Like, that's just real.
Keep it real.
That's just for me. I can't speak for everybody. I can speak for me.
Sure.
That was my response, and
so you
have no idea why.
Like, you became more keyed up when you found out that the assailant was a Black male.
I did, and the only thing, and this is in retrospect, like looking back,
right.
And the only thing that I can think of that caused that was I grew up in the suburbs of Kansas City in the 80s, graduated in mid 90s. And I was afraid to go downtown Kansas City, Missouri, all of my teenage years. Like, I was afraid if I went downtown because of the news coverage you see or whatever, like I was afraid like I would get robbed, I'd get assaulted. Like, I wasn't welcome down there. That was
robbed or assaulted by who?
By the Black community. Like, legitimately, that was the fear that I had. It's like my wife has this fear of cats that's completely irrational. I had a completely irrational fear. And all I can think of in retrospect is that I was taught that somehow, whether it be through the media, whether it be through the violence fanatization that whatever, whether it was through parental leadership, like, that's the best I can think of. There was an inherent bias, but I'm not sure where the root was.
Definitely. So it comes from a number of things, and we'll pick that up probably in another part of the conversation. But the point is, you apply to a police department with all of that crap inside you. These departments are training people on implicit bias as if you don't really have it. None of you really have this embedded stuff, but we want to teach you how to function cross-culture so you can be inclusive. But I don't think police departments are assuming that folks are hiring people who are scared of Black people. Now you got a club, some spray, a gun, some cuffs, a car, some authority, and you rolling up on Black people. How are departments not thinking that you all don't come with that? I mean, I try to work with our police department here in Madison, to ask us questions about screening and stuff. I don't think anybody ever says, do you have any irrational fears about?
I was trying to think of the
Black
Minnesota.
people. They don't ask that. So then when you see somebody, and so I'm thinking if I've got an irrational fear, I'm already protected. I'm already guarded. I read things the wrong way when they say it. And so when I look at this man kneeling, this officer, former officer kneeling on Floyd's neck, and the man is got his arms behind his back. He's secured. There's other cops around. He's on his stomach. He's having trouble breathing. I talked with our chief of police for Fitchburg, where I live, and he says they're trained. You do not put your knee on somebody's neck. Maybe in their back if they're wrestling. But it makes you think: is he afraid of Black people? Is he mad at Black people? What's his image about Black people? Because putting your knee on someone's neck and then having your hands in your pocket, that woman in Central Park calling the police while not running from the Black man that she's afraid of, she's standing there saying, I'm going to call the police and I'm going to tell them that it's an African-American male. I'm going to do it. That's not what I do when I'm scared. I run to my car. When I get in my car, I'll tell them what I saw. So clearly these folks have something going on inside their heads that we're assuming could not be in the lives and hearts of people in power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of agencies go through the Minnesota multiphasic. It's it's that massive inventory that you take, that self-inventory that kind of tells you if you're psychotic or whatever, all those different things. So I'm only making an assumption that doesn't have any way to measure that. And I don't remember any questions about color, race, our response, my implicit bias. I don't remember any. I'm not saying they're not there. Because there's like how many 700, 800 questions that you take.
Right.
but the reality is I don't recall any of those being a part of that. And maybe that should be. I don't know.
Sure. It's curious. The gentleman who asked the question about why do police respond so aggressively, and Alan, let me know if we got to the answer to your satisfaction. He also is a vet. I know this gentleman personally. He said that there were things that he could not do against a prisoner of war because it would lead to court-martial, that it was illegal to do certain things that a police officer with 40 hours of training and a gun could do to a person in this country and not be charged. Having been in the military and then becoming a police officer, how do you bridge, how do you reconcile how you were trained to think about the other, think about the enemy, protect yourself? Was being a police just a domestic version of being a Marine? Were you more aggressive as a Marine? Talk to me about how you move from that military background to then policing people in the community. Unchecked bias, how did you wrestle with the way it played out in your heart?
Yeah. So I would say that Marine Corps training back in the 90s was definitely about kill. Like that was it. Like within your rules of engagements, every engagement that you had, you were given a rule of engagement. Mm-hmm. But sometimes that was, you had to be fired upon first. Sometimes that was a threat of violence. So it just depended on the situation. And by the way, I never went and saw combat anywhere. I was stateside for my entire 4 years. I want to make that, abundantly clear. So I was never part of the fog of war, and I was never part of how I would respond to that. I had lots of training episodes, but nothing real, right? But as a cop, the training was completely different. It really was defensive tactics. That's what I learned. And my family members, I've had cops in my family. My dad was a cop out in Virginia. He was a military police out there back in the 70s, right? That's how I ended up being born in DC.
Sure.
And I have other family members that served in really high levels of policing, to include roles that looked at police officer standards and training. And I will say that the training in Minnesota was top notch. Like the training that I had in Minnesota was excellent, to include like a crisis intervention training where it was all about de-escalating somebody in a crisis mode, right? So the training had been available as far as so the theme was not kill at all. The theme actually was de-escalate. That was the training background that I had
in Minnesota.
In Minnesota and in Indiana. I'm not going to short, like they had a great defensive tactics program there. But I do distinctly recall watching video after video after video of cops being assailed or shot. Like that was a major. So back in the 70s, cops weren't wearing vests. The death rates of law enforcement was through the roof, right, from encounters. And so there's that pendulum swung to really helping cops not helping cops go home at the end of their shift. And that was the emphasis that you heard time and time and time again, right, was you need to go home at the end of your shift. And I think there can be like for me personally, there were plenty of times where I would think in my own mind, or I even heard it said, right, like I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6, right? And so you have officers that can be thinking in that capacity, like I need to go home safe tonight. And that can affect the way that you engage with anybody. So if you armed or unarmed, if you're in that knee-jerk reaction, if you're concerned, whether it's rational or irrational, you're going to respond with a mentality that can mimic that. I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. What that means, carried by 6, meaning the pallbearers versus the jury.
Right. So, I was speaking with Anthony. I might try to pull him on a little bit later if I can finagle that technology. But Anthony Ward, a former officer, also said that folks would come into the force. My brother's an officer in Chicago. Folks have come into the force who've never had a physical fight or altercation. And so when you're in a situation, you have these fears, you now are in an aggressive environment, that fear kicks in and people go into a flight or fight kind of life or death kind of situation. And so the police departments are hiring people who have no cross-cultural experience and no confrontation experience, no fighting experience. Man, I'm just thinking that's just asking for trouble. So when you look at what's going on, well, let me just back up and let me ask this. People talk about this blue fraternity and police officers having each other's backs. I'm not trying to get you in trouble or anything, but is it true that there's pressure when officers see stuff that's inappropriate, illegal, wrong, evil, that there's lots of pressure to not speak up? We assume that that's the case, but do you believe that that's the case?
Not in the agencies I work for. So I can't say that that's, again, agencies.
I'm asking for about your experience.
Yeah. So the agencies I worked for were not major metropolitan areas, right? Small town, a couple of small town agencies and one mid-sized town agency.
Mm-hmm.
So
do you think that exists? Do you think that pressure exists?
I wouldn't be shocked if it exists, but I wouldn't sit here and say that it absolutely exists. I can say that, that there are in my, like, even in this conversation, right? Like I don't want, I have a lot of really good friends that are in law enforcement that are great men and women, and I don't want to dishonor them either, right? And
we're talking about the bad ones. Just so you know, I'm not talking about my brother either.
No,
we're trying to understand the bad ones. So I guess what would keep an officer silent seeing that neck on George Floyd's neck? What would make a person not say this is inappropriate? Because the people filming are saying, hey, he can't breathe. People can clearly say that's not within the rules of training, from what I understand, certainly not in Wisconsin, unless Minnesota has a different style of training.
No.
So
Minneapolis came out and said that's something that they would never train on.
But what stops a person who has taken vows and training to not check their fellow cop when this is going on and cameras are on? What buys that silence? Why wasn't that just one officer being fired before? And I guess we're speculating, because I'm not asking you to speak for all of them, but I'm just trying I want people talking to a former white cop to think, what's going on in the minds of those other officers? Not all of them are white. What's going on in their minds that you're looking at something that's not appropriate? Where does your training go? Where does your de-escalation training go? how do you feel comfortable kneeling on someone with your hands in your pocket and not think that's going to be a problem?
Right.
Other than the fact so many cops have done equally egregious things and haven't been charged. So I'm saying, what's your thought about the officers who saw that happening and didn't say anything?
It's just really weird. So like when you're in the military, when you're serving in the military, you're not fighting for your country. You're fighting for the person next to you, right? Like that's what you're told. When you're training, that's always what they tell you. Like the person that you're fighting for is the one next to you. And I think that mentality can easily creep in to any profession that we have, to include law enforcement, right? I mean, these are people that you need to count on in very highly dynamic, critical situations to care for you and to be there for you. And so there's this esprit de corps. There's this sense of loyalty that you have towards one another, right? And with that relationship comes this like tension of, I don't want to see them get in trouble. And then you have this loyalty tension. I don't even know if we can name it in the moment though, right? But like there's this loyalty tension of your partner who you've served with how many hours, and somebody that you're engaged in a critical incident. And I will say this:
you might be afraid of and have some implicit bias towards.
Yes, yeah, that could be part of that equation, right? And not so. This is the part. You know what? I told you I'm wide open, transparent.
Sure,
like I'm not trying to hide nothing. I will also say that, like we talked earlier, cynicism is a real issue within law enforcement, and I think the way you speak about people, just general, and I'm not talking about any specific social class. I'm talking about people that we know names of, right? It was really easy to get in conversations and use words like mope or scrote bag or whatever, like these derogatory words that you would use towards human beings, like imago Dei people, right? Like in the image of God people.
Right.
But like I didn't have a theology class in my brain at all. Like I wasn't a Christian when I would have told you I was, but I wasn't a Christian when I first started being a cop. I had none of that in my mind until later in my time as a police officer. And when that happened, when I started viewing people as loved by God as a cop, everything changed for me in the way that I policed. It became more about everybody, not just about the partner that I served with. I still cared about the partner I served with. That didn't go away. But I would go to calls and I'd be praying for my partners. I'd be praying for the assailant. I'd be praying for the victim. I'd be praying for the EMS personnel and myself, like all of us on the way to a call, right?
Sure.
But that wasn't the case before. Before it was totally different. Like, how am I going to respond to this? How's it going to happen? Sure. I need to be in control. If I'm not in control, then I'm not doing my job. Like that was the reality of the mind.
No, that's good, man. Are police officers sworn in? Like, is there a swearing in? And what?
Yes. What do you like? Think about it. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm actually thinking out loud, so it's not trick. What do you swear to?
There's a. I'm trying to remember what I had something in front of the city council, and I didn't memorize it. I can tell.
I know it's protection and safety, but is it protection of society or protection of fellow cops?
I couldn't tell you what the verbiage is.
I would imagine as an officer, I need somebody to kind of talk back. Empathy, you're out here. What's it too? Because here's what I'm really asking. I appreciate you being an honest book. I'm gonna be one also, because we're brothers in Christ, and we got to also get on the pastor discussion. I still feel that you feel the pressure to be very open-minded and very gingerly with your words because you don't want to insult cops. I don't think your vows were to other cops. I think your vows were to people. So why can't folks like you see this as helping cops by calling this out? When people say pastors are crooks, I don't get bent out of shape. When they say when pastors are pedophiles, I don't get bent out of shape because you know what? I don't mess with people's money. I don't mess with people's children. I don't mess with people's wives. I don't mess with God. And so when people start talking about what pastors have done, I don't get insulted. I don't be like, I try to live in a way that shows them that there's a different way. But I don't feel a need to protect the ones who are crooked or justify the ones who are not. So we're really just talking about bad cops here. And so I guess what I'm really trying to get at is if the vows are to protect the community.
Yep.
How do you not protect the community when the community has a knee on its neck? And why are cops not thinking about that? And why are so many of them doing these kinds of things and getting up and going to churches or teaching Sunday school and stuff? And how do cops not think that it is the right thing to do, that it is in alignment with their vows and their oath to protect the community, to the point we would rather take our chances with a mugger and a gun than having someone call the police? Like, that's messed up. That is messed up, because folks who look like you, your children, think they're on our side. Mm-hmm. And I grew up thinking that, believing that. Yeah. Got a brother who's an officer, but in recent situations, talking to a woman about her dog being on a leash, people coming in your house and shooting in your bed because it's the wrong house, shooting you in your own apartment because they think it's their apartment, in the house, out the house, in the store, out of the store, mask, unmasked, hands up, hands down, hands behind you. It's like, where do we go to not be shot?
Right.
And what do we do to get the good cops to call out the bad ones? Because when that doesn't happen, that's what gives all y'all. But listen, you can't pay me enough to know that a fellow pastor is molesting children in his church. I'm going to be quiet because he's a brother. I'm going to be quiet because I don't want to be a narc. I'm going to be quiet because I'm not going to be in fellowship. You ain't going to be in my pulpit. We ain't going to hang out like we're cool. Because if I run with you, somebody's going to associate me with you. So for me, part of the problem is that I do believe that a minority of folks could do what happened. But I think the silence around it, Chad, creates an environment where someone can think they can kneel on a brother's neck, put his hands in his pocket, look in the camera, and think, shit ain't gonna happen to me.
Sure. Yeah, I would say that I have witnessed cops calling out cops doing stupid stuff. Like on a scene, there's definitely times when emotions and everything gets triggered within you, and you go to a level that's way too high. That is just over and above. And I have seen cops definitely call out others in it, right?
Okay.
So I'm not like, it does happen. It absolutely. Sure. There was one agency that created a binder with all of the bad people in it, right? And guess who all the people in that binder were? They're all people of color. And thankfully, many officers went and said, this ain't happening. Like, this goes away right now. Like, get rid of it. You should be fired for having it. Like, all of that was part of the conversation that I'm aware of, right? And so, so there's not a willingness to at least in my experience, a willingness to turn a blind eye to a blatant crime, right?
Right.
I don't know I'm so enraged by what happened to George Floyd. Like, when I watched that, I'm just, as a former cop, I'm just pissed. I don't need to know all of the context to be mad about that. I don't need to know all the details to be angry and asking questions like, how did that happen?
Or well, why was he in custody in the first place?
Like, what the heck? Like, how do you end up there for that long? Like, that's a real question.
What pisses you off about that scenario? And again, I'm asking, I'm not, what specifically about that pisses you off? That it gives bad cops give cops a bad name, white people a bad name, it breaks distrust, or it's the death of another innocent person? So the death, and there's both and. Sure, like, the death is the catalyst that just sends me over the edge. But when I look at the face as he's looking down at a fellow human being that is made in the image of God, and it's just a blank stare. That pisses me off to the nth degree. Like, I don't know how do you train that? Like, I don't know that's where my frustration lies too. Like, there's great training out there. There's great training on the Constitution and how you enforce constitutional law and civil liberties and how you should enforce and uphold all people. And there's excellent training that is out there. And I know
brothers and sisters in law enforcement are going through that training. But so how do you look at somebody that's saying they can't breathe, and you got other people saying it, and you just have a blank stare? So
and your hands in your pocket.
Like, that's what set me off. I mean, the death is the part that sets you off, right? But what, I guess I can't fathom that.
Sure. And you were trained to think you're the good guys. You're the guys that show up.
Yeah.
What does it do in your head to know that I don't believe all cops are bad, but my heart skips a beat when a car gets behind me and the lights go on, as if my life might end that day? That I actually think this might result.
It breaks my
in
heart.
this. You know,
I can say that for sure. So we talked in Chicago, 2 years ago, and I just kind of shared briefly when like the glass shattered for me, right? Like it's 2 a.m. It's negative 22 degrees outside. There's a black male walking down the street with not dressed for the weather, carrying a trash bag on his back, and I'm on routine patrol, and I roll up, and I'm just like, hey man, and he's instantly offended that I had a conversation with him, and I said, like, I don't care your name. I don't care what's in your bag. The only thing I want you to do is tell me where you're going so I can get you there so you don't get hurt. We don't even have to conversate. I don't care if I can help you. I want to help you. And he said that was the first time that he ever had a positive engagement with a law enforcement officer in his life. And I wept legitimately after that. I mean, he didn't want to get in my car, rightfully so. Like, he's like, I don't trust you, man. I'm like, dude, I'm just going to go then.
I mean, Chad, there's this feeling that it's a true death sentence, even like with a routine traffic stop. It's not like I don't rob banks, I don't rob gas stations, I don't mug people. But there's this thought that if I get pulled over in Fitchburg, I've got the chief of police on speed call. I'm going to just say, listen, I just want you to hear everything because I don't know all your cops. I don't know what people bring to the party. I don't want somebody looking at me in a nice car and think, well, what are you doing out here? I could be on a pastoral call at 2:00 in the morning, rushing to an emergency room. But when I do drive and I see a car, my heart skips a beat. And when I'm out of town and I come back and I hit Dane County, I have a sigh of relief because I think at least I know the sheriff, at least I know the county executive. If something goes down, I got their cell numbers. When I'm in the city of Madison, I'm in Fitchburg, I know the chief. But when I'm out just with state troopers, and I'm not even, just because of what I've seen and experienced, this deep level of fear. Hey, a couple good questions that are coming in.
Yeah.
Angela asked, why is it our responsibility to teach our young African-American males about the rules regarding encounters with the police? Like when an issue like this happens, this is not fair asking you this because you're not currently a cop. I'm wondering to what extent are police departments using this video as training to say, we got some more outreach to do. We actually have people who think we are the bad guys. They think the good guys are the bad guys. But what's your thought about that responsibility, that onus being on us to have the talk with our kids? Because you said you don't have to have the talk with your kid, but that we have to have the talk. That makes it feel like we're both, your family, my family's paying taxes. We're paying for law enforcement, but there's a benefit you expect, and there's a benefit that I don't necessarily assume is mine.
Right. Yeah, I would say that the agencies that I've worked for, especially the one in Minnesota, during critical incidents and these horrific involvements with law enforcement and deaths, and we had conversations about how do we reach our community and how do we have relationships in our community. It was a huge conversation in the organization that I was working for, and we'd have training sessions, we'd have staff meetings, we'd have late nights. Like we would get together and we'd run through scenarios and talk about how we're going to respect people. We sent every officer that we had through crisis intervention training so they could learn new ways to verbally de-escalate, because what would happen in a mental health crisis is they would remember everything about that encounter, but they'd be losing their mind, and cops were going immediately to force. Like that was the first response, was force, because they weren't listening to me. So now I'm going to control the situation. Well, what we learned, now they had a fear of law enforcement. And so there was a development of a training system, crisis intervention training, that gave you the tools necessary to de-escalate without using force, and realize that you had time on your side. And I think, I mean, even as pastors, I think, we get this, like, we have time. There's crisis that happens and we need to be there for people, and but we have time to allow them to process however they need to process or grieve in that scenario. We don't have to solve their problem and rush out, right? And so, but there was an underlying current that I remember as a law enforcement officer with very few, by the way, very few officers, that there was like, oh, we have another call, we got to go. And I'm like, well, let's deal with this one. Right. Like, okay, and when I was a sergeant, the great thing was I could show up on a scene that needed more finessing, and I'd be like, you guys go, I got this.
Sure.
I'll have I'll stay here for an hour. I'm good. Like, let me just handle this.
How long ago was it when you were a Marine?
95 to 99.
Okay. So about 10 years. No, 20. You said 99?
95 to 99.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so it's been about 20 years since you've been out. I mentioned earlier that one of my friends was former. I guess, let me ask this. In your training, what circumstance, again, as a Marine, as an elite service person, under what circumstances would you be allowed or need to put your knee on the person's neck once they've been secured?
Well, Marine Corps would be totally different, right? If we're engaging with people, we're not engaging to apprehend.
Because your thing is to kill.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, we would do a joint task force mission in some of the national force in Southern California, and that was about the only time I remember ever being on a mission where our role was to apprehend, and that was all about immigrants crossing the border and trying to find them, and then trying to find a bunch of weed fields in the middle of the forest. That was our role.
Sure. When you first saw pictures of that officer with Floyd, did you think, wow, that's something we would have done in the military, or I've never seen that in the police force, or why is he doing that? Like, what was your first reaction when you saw his knee on him, the guy saying he can't breathe in his hands?
My first reaction was, get off. What are you doing? Get off. What are you doing? That was my first reaction.
Have you ever seen that maneuver before? Have you ever seen somebody's knee on someone's neck when they were secured and had other officers around?
Small of the back, so the upper part of the shoulder blades.
Yeah. That's what my police chief said in Fitchburg. They were trained to do that, but not on the neck.
Upper part, not on the neck. We've held, so secure the neck, you can secure the body, right? Like, if you can control the head, let me put it that way, control the head, you can control a body. So if somebody's trying to fight you, but you can control their head on the ground until you can get them in handcuffs or get compliance, like that you'll control their movements. Okay. So there's holds you can do on the mandibular angle is what the pressure points here are, right? There's a bunch of different things that you can do. But you're always reminded when you're doing defensive tactics to you don't block the airway.
Right. Particularly when a person's saying they're not able to breathe. Because again, I'm just still haunted by this discussion that, my colleague just said, if he were to mistreat, and he was overseas, if he were to mistreat an surgeon or someone who's coming in, if they were subdued and they mistreated them, it would be illegal. It's against the rules of war. And I'm just still trying to think, how can you not be allowed to do something on enemy territory, but that you can do in inner cities, and then have this loud outcry by the white community that, these are just black people whining, and he was just doing his job. And if cops can't do their jobs, they can't go home to their kids. How do folks in the white community, here's where I'm asking you to talk for all white people for just a minute. How do folks look at that and not see the injustice? And I mean, the natural stuff, not even just like through the spiritual lens. How do they look at that and want to justify him?
I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you. Like, I can tell you that, this has been a journey for me to own the bias that's in my life that I have.
Yeah.
And I can tell you how I would have responded to earlier. I would have said, oh, well, not all the facts are out. That's the typical response.
Sure.
Or what do you want me to do about it? That's another response. Or I'm not racist. My best friend is. Right. You have that, because so there's this justification, whitewashing maybe is the right term for that. There's this justification of when you hear words like prejudice or racism, I always made it about me.
Right.
But I'm not. and not looking at the broader problem, which is cynicism and systemic racism. Like those two things go hand. I think they go hand in hand, right? The way I view somebody and the way I talk about somebody is going to change the way that I engage with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've been a part of squad room conversations where, and I've said some pretty nasty things in the squad room back in my day as a cop, right? And I'm not proud of any of that. I lament all of that. I'm sorry for
being honest. We assume it. I'm glad you're being honest.
Yeah, I can't apologize enough for it.
Sure.
Right. There's a guilt that I carry because I know there was an inherent bias in the way that I responded at times. And there was times that I didn't view people, I viewed them as less than human, as less than me, as less than whatever. Right.
Thank you for owning that. Thank you for. So how do these people keep getting, let me ask you this. If you were hiring, if you could sit in Minneapolis and you could you devise questions or a system to weed out people like that cop? Because I'm trying to figure out, there is listen, I'm a diversity and inclusion professional. I've spent the best part of my professional career helping white people think differently about inclusion. There is no workshop that exists that would work that out that man's heart. That man would need an exorcism or a shrink.
Well, I would say that it probably wasn't present when he got hired. 19 years on the force, 19 years of cynicism creeps it. Like, I was only caught for 15 years total.
But you already had that fear. So what happens when you have fear and cynicism? So I'm trying to say, what questions do you ask about, do you have any personal relationships? Tell me what you think when you see this photo of this person. So I'm saying, in light of what's happening, that's become this epidemic, I get that you grow cynical, but he also started, I don't think the department made you see people as less.
No,
I don't think the department did that.
That was part of my upbringing.
So I'm trying to ask the hard question then, Chad. What are y'all not asking to let people like him come on to the force? What needs to be asked of white people about their interactions, their thoughts about other people, if they're going to have guns and clubs and stuff? What needs to be asked of white law enforcement, potential white law enforcement, folks who are applying, that's not being asked?
That's a great question. I wish I could tell you an answer. I have no idea because I don't think that. Well, I'm not a psychologist, so that would help probably if I was a psychologist. But I don't even think that So I'm just saying I wasn't even aware of it. So I don't know what. I just where my mind goes right now is the baby doll test. Mm-hmm. Remember where there's kids that are given
a black doll, and a white doll,
and they're asked which one's the bad baby, which one's the good baby, and they consistently chose the black doll over and over again, right? In that scenario. So I don't know what you ask to figure that out in somebody's mind if that's their natural bend.
Can you give cops $2 and say, which one would you pick? Which one is a criminal? Which one is bad? Which one's the bank robber? I mean, I know I'm sounding a bit facetious, but I think we're pushing you on this for the other people who are listening who know cops.
Yeah.
I'm saying we can't let people off on this.
No.
And we can't, because my fear is, Chad, that if we say the department creates cynicism, then the cops are just a product of their environment with no ownership.
Yeah.
They're taking a check, they're getting a pension.
I get you.
They got to get a check in, but then it's not really, I mean, what really makes a cop cynical? Is it the badge? Is it the gun? Or is it constantly interacting with people and reinforcing thoughts and things that you already have? And so I want to make sure that it's not sounding like there's this joke in pastoring that, hey, I love ministry, it's just the people I can't stand. That's kind of the joke, and we know ministry is the people. So if cops are cynical, they're dangerous. So who's taking a cop off the field when they become cynical? Who's taking the gun away from them? Because as cops are getting cynical and don't know where it's coming from, brothers are dying in the streets while people are saying, I'm not racist, I didn't do anything wrong, I was just trying to do my job. Right, Sarge? Right, Sarge? And so I'm trying to really bring it down to a level of culpability, because we have begged, we have protested, we've actually taken up our own weapons, with Huey Newton and Bobby Seals and stuff. That didn't work out that well for us. we can't tell white cops to stop treating us like we're chattel property, stop pulling out your guns on kids. We can't stop that. And so when we move beyond cynicism, what do we say to these folks? Like, who's saying no? Who doesn't make it? If this guy made it, who didn't make the police force?
And the reality is that's where your patrol sergeants have got to be able to know their people, and to know guys that are just acting. They got to know their guys, their people, and then they have to have the courage to say, "Dude, you're out, man. Like, you need to take a break. Like, this is a problem." We can do more training, right? But like you said, like, if it's an implicit bias that's underlying, like, until the glass shatters for them, I don't know how we have to create moments for the glass to shatter. I don't know how you do that.
Sure. And I gotta tell you, Chad, I appreciate, because you don't know all the questions I'm asking. We've met each other face to face a couple of times. I met you because you listen to Black Like Me. Be careful what you ask for, because you're like, hey man, if you're willing to come on the talk, here we are. So yeah. Let me tell you. So let me ask you this: you're a former cop, former Marine, and you're a current pastor. You have a platform. Mm-hmm. What role have you accepted, will you accept, to address the issues we're talking about with current cops and with the pastors who shepherd those cops, who sit in the pews of their churches? What onus have you assumed as a person who's really speaking out against this kind of injustice?
Yeah, when I get an opportunity to, I try to take them on the journey that I've been on with individual people. Mm-hmm. Like you said, ministry's relationship. Yeah, so like books like Wide Awake, books like White Fragility, books like Divided by Faith. Trying to share my story. Like, I'm ashamed, but I'm not afraid to tell you where I've been and how that was changed for, and I'm still a terrible work in progress, right? Like,
I got you.
I still fight with the inherent bias that's within me, and I don't want it there. I don't want it there at all. I don't want to be nervous about going downtown Minneapolis. I don't want to have any nerves about that. Like, I should be able to go where I need to go and not feel any nervousness. But,
sure. Are you nervous about getting in your pulpit and talking about this?
I suppose my pause would say yes. Just the fact that I paused at all might say that there's two sides to yeah.
No, I'm sorry, don't stop. Somebody left their phone on. So let me push it, because this is where this is where shit finna get real.
Right. So I look to people like you to help me navigate, how do I do that? I look to people in the denomination that we belong to, right, to go to stretch myself, right? Like this, it's hard to own it, first of all, and then you know how as soon as you start calling people out with whatever sin it is, and racism is sin, 100%, right? Like, whenever you start calling people out, I know. But whenever you start calling people out, right, there's always that backlash, and that goes against our self-preservation mode.
It does, but not against our call, because we're called.
But not against our call, exactly.
So let me ask you this: there are a plethora of things, and I will walk with you. But let me ask you this: this is something that I'm going to help you with, that I wouldn't do with a whole lot of folks. I want to help you to understand that you can't lay that burden at my feet to help you, because there is a plethora of things. There are 52 Sundays where you probably get to preach and minister, and you don't ask for my help to talk about any of the other sins that you talk about: gluttony, fear, sexual stuff, financial stuff. So when it just comes to Black people being gunned down in the street like animals, now my white brothers want me to help them to understand how to have the balls to get in the pulpit to just talk about what's in the book. Like, I don't want you to quote Jesse Jackson. I don't want you to quote me. I don't want you to quote. I just want you to do what's in the book. And so part of what's got to happen is, if a man is kneeling on a Black man's neck and the other officers aren't saying anything, and my fellow pastors are not saying anything to Black people, y'all all in it together. All in it together. And we need you to break that cycle, because these cops are going to be sitting in somebody's church. So they need mental health checks and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying this because I believe you're drawn to these issues for a reason. And I'm not calling you out, Chad. I'm calling you in. I'm calling you up. But if I don't believe that my white fellow pastors are going to help me call this stuff out, because you just boldly called it sin, if we don't do it, then who is? Who is going to speak to white power? Who's going to speak to that privilege? Who's going to speak to police brutality? Because it ain't the captains, it's not the chief. You know, the mayor's on television talking about stuff, but they're probably worried about losing endorsements and stuff. They have now determined that if you're white, he wouldn't have died. I retweeted it and said, now tell me something I don't know. But tell me what money you're going to put aside, who you going to hire, how you going to fix this, Mr. Mayor. But don't tell me that if he had been white, he'd be. We understand that. And so I guess what I'm really saying to you is, if you know it's wrong and your heart is broken over this, and we pray, God, let what things break my heart that breaks your heart. You don't need my help to get in the pulpit to do what is biblical. You took vows. You got a call. You got an anointing. And so I guess what I wanted to know is, I get not wanting to break the cop tie. I get that there's this loyalty because of fellow law enforcement. But
there's no excuse for that either, by the way.
Yeah,
there's no excuse for that. There's no excuse.
I got
for
you.
That tie either.
So what's the loyalty with white clergy then? What's that loyalty that we're afraid to call this stuff out? Because I don't want to talk about it, but we got to on Sunday. I don't want to get in the pulpit and say another one of us died. So I just got off a call with the Black Ministers Alliance, and folks are asking, where the white brothers? Where the white sisters? Where the fellow Christians? Where the people that sing Kumbaya? What's going on? So this is a chance for the church to, if there's never been a chance for us as leaders to get things back on track, this is a golden moment, man.
Right. So, so it's just my comment though, like, I didn't mean to put it on you. Like, I know it's not on you. It's definitely 100% on me. What I look to your leadership, not just for this issue. I listen to you, not just because of Black issues, right? Like I listen to you beyond that. I listen to other pastors for wording that's helpful to listen, right? Like I want to make sure that I'm listening correctly so that I can speak correctly.
No, I got you. And I know you want support and reinforcement. So I'm not downing you for that. I just want you to see.
I hear you though.
You live in Minnesota.
I hear what you're saying.
You saw what happened, and we can process how you word something. But if the process is, if you say something, oh hell no, because that can't be on the table. Right. Because then I got COVID-19, pre-COVID-19, post-COVID-19, Black, brown, Asian, white folks in our church, and all this kind of stuff. And then then where I go when my heart is heavy is to my network and to my circle and to my folks who get it. And I'm just trying to encourage my white brothers and sisters, particularly, and non-Black brothers and sisters, take the pulpit, take courage, take the word. We got to do the stuff that's in it, because the rest of the community is watching us, Chad. And this is why a lot of us don't go to church, because they think we're going to see what white folks are going to say. Well, white folks are going to say, it's like what Franklin Graham said in an open letter, tell your kids to put their hands up and do what the cops say, and they won't get shot. Well, Graham, where the hell are you now? Because his hands weren't up, they were back, and the knee was on his neck, and he was compliant because he was restrained. Now, what do you say? Well, why was he in custody anyway? And where are the fathers in the home? So I'm just thinking, Christianity, man, our faith, the faith that changed you, Chad, is getting a bad name. And Christianity is getting beat almost as bad as Black people in the streets, because we have these opportunities. And so,
yeah, you know what's really telling about even the journey where I'm at right now,
sure,
right?
Sure.
So even as I wrote just a insignificant Facebook post to talk about where I was feeling,
sure,
and the heartache that I had, and
right,
there was uncertainty about whether or not I should post that. I can't name what that uncertainty was, but I can tell you that feeling was there. I can't tell you about whose loyalty I felt like I was going to be breaking. I don't know, but I know that was an underlying, like, should I even write anything or should I stay silent? I'm like, no, like there's no way that I can sit silent. So
Sure.
I'm learning, right? I don't even have sea legs yet. Like I'm just
Sure.
but that's not an excuse. And so I don't want to sound like I'm making an excuse. So I'm sorry if that's the way that's
No.
coming across.
Here's the thing, Chad. I appreciate your honesty. Because if you came on and said, I got black friends, I used to kick it with black guys in the military, I play basketball, this is what I do, folks would be turned off. There are folks that are saying they appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty. Then there are other people that are saying, come on, Chad, because even though you may be white, we're people of faith, and so we're counting on you and being a different one. So I think on behalf of the people that are writing, they're saying, find out what that pressure is. Find out what that pressure is, because that pressure, that invisible fear is what's muzzling the good cops who are watching the bad cops strangle people, shoot people, do whatever they're doing to people. It's that silence. It's what King talked about. And we got a note in here from someone, is Angela, who's even asking how many people in the post have heard from their white female or male friends, either yesterday or today, saying, I'm going to do my part to stop the violence, or is there just silence? And so what could be redemptive in this process is we don't want that cop to come and say, I'm sorry. That woman, Amy Cooper, out in Central Park, I knew what's going to happen. She's going to come on, she's going to cry. Then white women tears, she's going to start crying. You're going to take all the stuff off the man that could have died. People will be rubbing her back, trying to tell her to calm down. Her tears have been weaponized. And she's going to say, I'm sorry, I'm not a racist. And people are like, she said it. She's not a racist. And so with all of that stuff going on, it's the silence that really takes the wind out of our sail. We can't undo what that officer did. But if we saw people taken to the streets and we look at those crowds, we look at those people, we as people of color are not thinking that that's the faith community, that those are fellow pastoral leaders. So what's that saying to people about our commitment to faith and our loyalty to Christ? That's at risk. It's not just black people at risk. But so I want to help in that. I want to help in that process.
Our witness as Christians is at risk.
Our witness as Christians. And so part of what I'm wanting to do is we need to believe that somebody will move from Facebook to the pulpit, that they will say things that they're saying to their 3,000 friends who may not even know us, but will we say it to the 100, 200, 300 people who look to us to marry their children, baptize their grandchildren, bury their parents? They trust the words that we have. We can't just do an announcement. Christianity was so complacent in all of this stuff. And so I'm really wanting to encourage you to think about, I'm a Marine. Like, you were trained to lay on a freaking grenade if it was going to blow up your family or me or your platoon. You were trained to take one for the team, but you hesitated when I asked, what the hell has happened in our system that you are more afraid of white people in that congregation than a live grenade on the field? That's baffling to me, but that has gripped the heart of white Christians, white evangelicals. That's gripped people's heart. And we got to look at that, man. We got to move beyond that. So I'm not demonizing you. I mean, I think it's ballsy to come on here and talk, because you didn't say, well, I've got it all right, let me come on and let me talk. You're allowing people to at least hear, or you're pulling back the drapes to say, wow, this is what's going on in someone's heart, in someone's life. Man, Chad, if my friend Don was robbing the bank and I stood there, you call me an accomplice. Mm-hmm. Why don't cops think that they're going to be an accomplice by watching something like that happens? Like, I get that cop had his hands in his pocket and didn't think anything was going to be done. This is a question someone asked. Did all the bad apples just show up in that barrel today? Does Minneapolis have so many of them? Is it so easy just to fall into that silence? I'm going to be silent here. I'm going to be silent in the pulpit. Like, as you look at that, do you just think that's the exception? I get if it's just the one, but the three that kept his secret, were they afraid of him losing their pension, having something happen to them?
I seriously doubt anything deep was in their mind at all. It was a natural, just a response, right? Like, My
it's not a
guess
natural
is
response to watch someone who takes a vow to protect people and save life. I don't understand that.
What I'm saying is I don't think it was a calculated response. Maybe that's a better way to say it. I don't think that they had his pension in mind when they sat there silently.
But aren't you trained so that you don't have to take calculated? Aren't you trained so that if someone comes at you, how to react? Like, aren't they trained?
Yeah.
Like, if they saw me with my neck, my knee on a white woman's neck,
right?
If they saw that in the community, if they saw somebody fighting, I'm asking, and again, I'm really talking rhetorically because you can't answer what's in their mind, but you can sort of see what I'm asking.
Yeah,
the guy that did it
you.
is going to be demonized, but what did he have on them? What could he have on them? How do you buy that level of loyalty, of just backing up this man's crap? Is that the exception? Is that the rule? Because to me, the silent, like we can say that one guy, okay, that must be Hitler's grandson or something. Like this guy is sick. He's a psychopath. But we think that others would stand around and watch him do it. And who else goes to lunch with them, goes hunting with them, goes bowling with them? Is this just the tip of the iceberg? The fact that they could be so compliant like this with Laquan McDonald in Chicago, how many cops had to collude in order to cover up that boy was shot 14, 15, 16 times, from the cams being off to the footage being taken? Do they all show up at the same place? Like, were those all the 16 bad cops? Or does something click and they become more committed to their community or they're committed to their fellow uniforms in the community they're serving? Because I don't say I appreciate it, but if someone says he came at me, I thought his phone was a gun, so I responded. That cop wasn't protecting his life, and others watched that man lose his life. And if we didn't have those cameras, those men would still be cops today. And that's just, I guess I'm just trying to process this, because the angst is not just the man kneeling on him. The angst is, well, if it had been 8 cops, would it have been the same? If it had been 16, if that had happened in a jail cell, well, what did happen to Sandra Bland? Can you choke somebody out? Can you do this? And just have people just look the other way? Like, we got this real fear now that not only are we dealing with you, that individual, we're thinking, hey, somebody else is going to stop it. Now we believe that 4 or 5 people can be around watching it and nobody's going to say anything. And Chad, that's really scary.
I think there's that innocent bystander or the bystander theory or whatever it is, right? Like, just in culture in general, when they see something happen, they assume somebody else is going to step in, and that's certainly not. I don't know. That's not an explanation for any of this. I have no explanation for any of this. I just It's just what your comment made me think of, was that bystander, that self-preservation mode, right? Like. We go into the self-preservation mode and you look at yourself and you're like, all right, we just screwed up. And that first thought, how many times when you do something really, really stupid, in my youth, my first thought was, all right, how do I need to lie to get out of this? Or what do I need to do so that I don't have to pay the consequence for what just happened? I don't know if you ever had those experiences when you were growing up or not, but that was certainly part of my life.
It's called CYA. How do you cover your butt?
Right.
I got you. I know those 4 cops were fired. Should they be charged, in your opinion? From what you saw. I know you don't know the facts.
I don't know the facts of it. I would be shocked if there were not charges that came out of this.
But I'm asking if you think they should, not if you think they will be. From what you saw and just how complicit they were. That nothing in your training would say that you would do that. So just from what you saw, should someone lose their job by being silent when unnecessary force that results in death?
Yeah, the job should, in my opinion, the job should totally be lost. And as far as criminal charges go, from what I've seen, I would be researching the statute book to find a charge that fit what I saw.
What are you going to say to the white community if they walk? Because you need to start prepping for that.
Yeah. What do you say? Like, I would share my outrage.
It might be different than what you say. I'm going to say a bunch of bad words. I want to repent. I'm going to say some shit that's going to get me in trouble with the whole denomination if that happened.
Yeah, this is not. So here's part of muscle memory you talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We baby step into things, right? Like we test the water, we get support, we test the water more, we get support.
Yeah.
There's no way I could stay silent if there's not charges, in my opinion. I wrote something down when I heard the press conference this afternoon that was setting it up. And I had my shocked face out. My like what? How do you say that? You said there's evidence they're studying the evidence, and there might be evidence to support criminal charges, might not be. And I'm like, what? How do you even say that? I wrote down what he said. I can't remember verbatim what he said. What's that?
No, that's black people sign when they're saying because of color. That's just our code. That's why. That's.
I thought, how do you say that out loud based on what everybody else has seen? You're going to put doubt in somebody's mind right now?
You're right.
That was just stupid, in my opinion.
Yes, man. It's going to go to a grand jury. It's going to be like the Michael Brown case. We got to be really careful because, it's just crazy. And the young lady in DC, in New York City in Central Park, watch my words. There's going to be a GoFundMe account. They're going to feel really bad that she was just trying to protect her dog. She was trying to protect Trixie, who's getting treats, and this angry, violent black bird watcher is trying to put special rays on her with this phone. Watch, there's going to be a GoFundMe, and old girl's going to get a raise. She's going to make more money through GoFundMe, and it's going to become public. It's going to be heavy. Sarah asks, as a white female, what is the most effective way I can help? And I ask because I'm truly curious. When you see injustice, Sarah, you gotta say something. Call your law enforcement and ask, could this happen in our city? What do you do to train in de-escalation? Ask elected officials. They work for you, Sarah. You don't work for them. They work for you. Ask those questions. But also, Sarah, educate yourself to understand how we got here. One of the things that we do, Sarah, I'm going to put this in here. Don, will you also type this? They can't see my notes. Can you type nehemiah.org/join the struggle? If you go to nehemiah.org, NEHEMIAH.org, Don's going to put out there on Facebook /join the struggle. There are materials so that you can understand what has happened in America to create these situations. I'll give you an example, Sarah. There was a law that was put on the books that white people were supposed to help to police black people to see if they were free. And so their job was to say, show me your papers. Are you free? Can you be out here? I'm going to take you back to Massa. And there were even like sundown clauses that black people knew they couldn't be outside after dark because white people could make citizen arrests. In fact, for many of us who are my age and older who are black, we were taught, and Chad, you've heard me talk about this on Black Like Me, when the lights come on or when the trees when the sunlight hits the trees, have your black butt on the porch, because the thought was you could be killed and beaten if you were not on the front stoop at nighttime. Ask any black friends my age or older, and they'll talk to you about, I asked as a Black Like Me icebreaker, did you have to be on the porch when the street lights came on? Yes, I did. Or when there's lights, so there was this sense that white people could police folks. And in fact, the growth in the beginning of law enforcement in this country was to bring black people back to the plantations from where they have escaped. And so the connection between blacks and law enforcement was never, this is who we call we're in trouble. At its inception, it really was about policing black people and the bodies and getting them back to their white owners. That was really what it was about. So I think, Sarah, you got to understand how we got here, because it's not merely just writing a letter or making a phone call. It's understanding that woman thought it was in her right. She's like, a camera's on her. Her dog is not on the leash. And she's like, I'm going to get you. I'm going to call the police and tell them that an African-American man is trying to kill me. She knows she's being recorded because she's saying, stop recording me. But she thinks her white fragility, her tears, Fluffy, Trixie, whoever that was, she thought that she's going to be justified because this black man is menacing. She knows what's happened in Central Park and what black people have been accused of. She knew what she was doing. And to feel like she could be fully justified in making that call while she was on camera is crazy. And can I tell you something? The Humane Society swept in and took that dog from her faster than those police officers had their jobs taken away from them. So we care more about dogs being mistreated. And she mishandled that dog. They didn't think she was fit for a dog. But they're going to try to tell her she's not racist. But she's doggist, petist. So, Sarah, educate, build some cross-cultural relationships. I don't know where people watch movies, watch 13th. Really go to our page and get those things. But you got to understand the issues, because my white friends who don't know the issues, you won't be tethered to the solutions. You'll only be moved by the next crises. And that's not helpful to us. My white friends who only text me secretly when the crap hits the fan, that's not hearing the situation, because I won't hear from you until the next shooting. And guess what? That's not when I need you. I need you talking to people, thinking about it, preaching about it, praying about it, canvassing about it. So understand how we got here, because the system is broken. And it's a system that many folks who look like Chad, you, Sarah, I'm assuming, you said as a white female, so I'm not assuming I'm reading. It works for folks like you. You can call and feel totally protected. When I call the police, I describe myself because I look like the idea of what an assailant is. I look like who Amy said was trying to kill her in Central Park. I look like the image Chad had in his head when people say it's a black male that's doing some stuff. Also, Tamar just put something up, 75 things white people can do for racial justice. Chad, I appreciate you. I appreciate your honesty. I don't expect people to have all the answers, and I know that it's a journey. I appreciate the fact that, you let me poke and prod, because we've had enough conversations that I believe that the sincerity is there, and I'm trying to have the sincerity to lead to action. People knew you could be a Marine, but when you went to boot camp, they tried to call that leadership out, but they didn't do it by saying, "Hey, are you okay?" They're like, "Drop and give me 50 more." And so I want to push you, because in my mind, as a black person, I'm about to get in some trouble here, but Chad, you're gonna give me some grace. But Chad, man, how tall are you?
It depends on what day it is. 5'11".
5'11". So I'm just telling you, you look like somebody I wouldn't want to pull me over if I was speeding. So I got to tell you, you've got a look that would bring a lot of authority. That if you say, here's my experience, here's my aha, here's what I'm not going to let have happen on my watch. I'm not going to be a part of a world that's going to let my children think this, so they can be silent on this. So I can't be silent for the sake of my children, because children do watch what we do. Go back to the old smoking commercials, the whole Kick the Habit campaign in the 60s. They would show parents smoking and then kids would be playing. I threw a lot of Winston-Salem cigarettes out of my mom because I watched them commercials. She said, "Boy, I don't smoke your toys, so don't play with my cigarettes." But they taught me this is bad, and if my parents do it, I'll do it. So for the sake of your children, not just mine, but yours, they got to see you really be a trailblazer in this. But I'm saying you have a level, you have presence. And if you have the look like you have not always had it together as a cop, and you talking about not only coming to the light personally, not like Nicodemus, but really coming in and saying, we're going to have to fix this. We're going to have to talk about this. We got to have some conversations. You're cynical, you're broken, you need Jesus, you need a help, you need a rest, you need a new job, you need something. But that fear and that implicit bias, I'm tired of us killing our Black brothers and sisters because we're jacked up. Haven't we killed enough Black people? Haven't enough Black people died on our watch? So I'm just letting you know, I just believe that you would move with some authority in that place. And you're trained for pressure. You're trained for combat. You're trained for pushback, and you're trained for strategy. And so I just want to welcome you to the struggle, bruh, because Black people and white people and folks from all ethnic backgrounds fighting together and speaking against injustice, that builds tight knittedness. Mm-hmm. But not just us lamenting it. But we got to really, really fight together. So I just want to welcome you to the struggle. You got a voice, you got experience, and if not you, who? And if not now, when? Because Minnesota, the country, the church needs your voice, bruh. You've been called for such a time as this, and I believe that, Chad.
Thank you. I appreciate it. where we go from here, I'm going to go forward. That's where we're going to go, man. We're going to go forward.
Yes, we are.
And
yes, we are.
We build in.
Yes, we are. Let me just see. Don, is Anthony Ward still out there? Yeah, Anthony, I'm doing this through Zoom. So let's see if you can come in for just a minute, because, we can talk about building bridges, but I'm saying if I can at least introduce you all together, there might be some platforms, a place where you all can just put your voices together and just think about how do you do this as men of faith who formerly were in law enforcement. There's just so much that you all. Okay, wait, Anthony, you here? I love technology. Oh, snap. Anthony Ward, I want you to meet Chad. Chad, I want you to meet my guy, Anthony.
What up, sir? How you doing?
Good to meet you. I saw you on Facebook, so we connected there. So it's good to see you face to Zoom.
Definitely. I paid attention. Like, I was doing some work and I saw the link pop up that y'all were about to go on, and I was like, oh, today is Thursday, Black Like Me Day. So
come on now.
I was like, let's do it.
Definitely, man. So Anthony, I know you and I got a chance to talk, man. You see that thing? We got a lot of views from yesterday. Good discussion. But at some point, man, I want to just have just a Zoom with you and Chad. 'Cause I just think, man, I was saying this to Chad as you were logging in, white brother, black brother talking, comparing notes, and just thinking about how do you communicate to your former colleagues? Because you all know how to communicate with them. You know how to get things to them. But I think we can move beyond just saying this is wrong and folks are doing this. I think we can be smart enough and strategic enough to say, here are 3 things that officers can do, or here's 3 things we want parents to know, or here are 3 things. Like folks don't even know how to do incident reports if they're mistreated. Like they don't even know. I had a friend, who told me a woman had her dog. Don't mess with white women when their dogs ain't on the leashes. Y'all hear me? So the dog wasn't on the leash, and he said something. This, our mutual friend. And he said, Mr. C. And he said by the time he got back, his captain sergeant, I forget the levels, called him. Was like, hey, yeah, man, this call came in. Like, what did you do? How do you handle it? Like, there's an ordinance. You can't have I'm doing my job. Black people would not think about calling a captain, a precinct captain, on a cop who told us, put your dog in the leash. Like, it does, like, it's nowhere in my mind that I would go up the chain and say, you need to get your officers in check. The first question was your dog not on a leash? So let's when we get back together, when we do another live, in a few weeks or something, let's remind people what they can do when they view stuff. Like, let's get people, like, can you record while it's going on? If I'm riding with you, Anthony, and you record and I'm driving, can an officer tell you to stop? Like, let's give some people some practical stuff, because life is dependent on this. And so after we stop the live, we're just going to talk for just a few minutes here. But I just want to ask Anthony, do you have any parting thoughts, like in 30 seconds? I'm going to let Chad, my guest in this segment, have the last 30 seconds. I'm going to tune this out because I got another live, and shoot, I'm tired, man. I need a drink or something.
I see. I would just say a couple things, like what he was saying about that, because I'm Black. I grew up Black. Like all of my experiences. But when I became an officer, especially in that probationary period, we don't talk about that, right? That's the period where if you do something somebody don't like, you do something a little wrong, they could let you go. So when you're a new officer and you see something that is questionable, you're not going to be like, oh, let me go tell it from the mountaintop. You're going to be like, shoot, so like, that's a real feeling. And like, as a Black dude who knows what it's like to be pulled over for no reason, I found myself like, I know I should say something, and like, that was a struggle like I had for the whole time I was an officer. And it's like, it was becoming easier and easier to be quiet.
Gotcha.
Like, for me as a Black man, it became easier and easier to be quiet. And that's when I started to think, like, I don't know, maybe this. And it was just a struggle. And then secondly, just to the hiring practices, like, we need to just do some new stuff in the way that we are recruiting, the stuff that we're looking at that brings officers in. And then just that whole being a part of the community. So not just being a part of the community, like living in the communities, but looking at who's in the community, recruiting from communities
Sure.
to bring those people back to the communities to serve and protect their communities, and actually allowing the community not to just be a part of the interview process, but to be a deciding factor.
That's good,
right?
Anthony.
Like to be a deciding factor. We interviewed these number of officers. Y'all got a chance to go to interviews. Now let's sit down and see what we want to happen, or if we want to ask a couple more questions. Because guess what? That psychologist who was hired by the department, he ain't really being paid to figure out if you ain't got the job. He just, are you good to do it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, his job ain't to be like, let's figure out why you can't get this job. His job is to say, okay, well, you're good enough to have this job. Because
the problems here. You know, with the fire department, they bring the community in to do all day interviews, but the police department doesn't. For people who put out fires, they let community folks, because the interviews were held at our church last year, all day for a week. But the police.
And so my question to that is, how much impact do those community members have, right? Like, because we talk about figurehead, and it might look good, but like, really, how much? So just.
No, that's true, but they're in the process. But with officers, we're going to come in contact with more officers than we are firefighters. Mm-hmm. So Anthony, I wanted to come on so we can talk about that. So I just think you and Chad could create a very powerful.
I could just speak to the hiring process real quick. So we had a civil service commission, which was members of the community but most of them had been on it since, for 30 years or whatever. So they're so ingrained in the normal hiring practices. And their authority was to narrow it down to the top 3 candidates if you were hiring one. And then it was the chief of police that could pick any one of those top 3 candidates to put them on the road. At least that was my experience and how that works. Just as little insider info, I guess.
That's good. Chad, any parting words? You get the last word before I sign off. Anything you just want to say to the listeners and stuff? Nikki and others said that they love you, Chad. Chad, let them know I didn't pick you up here. I think people are getting afraid that I was hard on you. Listen, Chad's my brother. I need Chad to be in the listen. Chad was a Marine. Chad was a Marine. That's all. He was a Marine. This is if not. Chad's life is on the line, he gonna want somebody to look at him and say, "Look, get your." They firing at us. That's how Chad was trained. If I just said, "Oh, Chad, you tried your best and your hair looks cool," Chad wouldn't respect me. I gotta say, Chad, take this. Come on, take this. Get your shit together. We gotta save this world. Chad, understand what I'm saying? Leave Chad. Ain't nobody hurting Chad.
What's the mission? What's the mission? What's the mission here?
So Chad,
save the world.
Save the world. Come on, Chad. Last word, sir. I really appreciate you, brother.
Marry the mission and date the method, right? Like, we got to be willing to change our methods to carry out the mission that we've been called to do. And so I'm willing to change my method. I just want to thank you for bringing me out on here. Thanks for being real with me and not letting me just you didn't handle me with kid gloves. So I appreciate that. I really do. I appreciate being called out, because I need to be called out. Once we get called out, guess what happens? We have no going back.
That's right.
Right? Like, once the glass shatters, there's no going back. You can either choose to ignore it or you can choose to step into it, but you can't do nothing.
Right.
So I feel like this is a great conversation. I appreciate it. I just thank you. Thank you for letting me be on here, man.
And I hope you're willing for you and Anthony and I to talk offline, to just think about how do we give people a chance to just listen as we talk about solutions, because a lot of people are going to be spouting up about the problems, but I think if we just have 3 solutions, but I want us to just kind of breathe a little bit. My wife just before I even came up here, she said, I think you've been given a platform and you have an experience where maybe you need to be talking on a regular basis about this with law enforcement officers, and to be able to partner up with somebody, and Anthony, to partner up with you. I've listened to you on Black Like Me, and I've just been really impressed, just with all around, just the willingness to have really hard conversations. And it takes a ton of courage, and it's stupid that it takes a ton of courage, but that's the reality. That's the reality. That's why I'm glad you said it, because if you said it's easy, exactly. I want you to, yes. We got to really do that. And again, I trust that spirit is working inside of you. I have to hope that legislation will change a police officer's actions, but I can trust that the spirit, that works inside of us, that's called us, will transform you and us to do the right thing. So I have to push those that are led by this higher power, of the Lord, because this is our commission. This isn't just articulately punched. This is really our commission. Somebody said, they said, come on now, Chad. They like that, Chad. They said, some of the comments, it's like, Kevin says, will this particular view be available later? The great thing about, let me just say this to my beautiful folks. I heard that there's like up to 111 people, Chad, that were on this call. It's only a couple of times I've done Facebook Live where we had that kind of engagement. This actually will stay on my Facebook page. There's a button on Facebook that's called Watch Party. Anthony, I need your help because you're technological. They can click that and invite people to watch it with them. Is that how Watch Party was? So anyone who's watching this will be saved on my, like right where you're watching it. As soon as we're finished, it's going to say Watch Party. Click it, start tagging people and say, hey, I want to watch this because this is really helpful. If you're a cop, former cop, military, former military, pastor, clergy, lay leaders, we hit it all. And we're about solutions. We really are. Again, if you want to know some next steps to take, go to our website, nehemiah.org. You see it right there on the screen, right behind my producer's little hidden screen right there, nehemih.org. Click the button that says join the struggle. And there's all kinds of resources to educate yourself about what's happening, what's going on. This, y'all, it's not propaganda. It's intelligent people. It's research. Come on, do I look like a propaganda guy? This stuff has got to stick, man. And so we got to do this. And so listen, my white friends, don't just come in secret. I call it Nicodemusing. Don't be coming to people at nighttime saying, I'm with you. Get out there, y'all. We at war. We are at war. Can you believe that there's something that Black people are more afraid of today than COVID-19? It's a woman with a dog not on a leash. It's a police. It shouldn't cost this to be Black in America. So tweet this show out, share it with somebody, get it out, talk to somebody, post it, repost it, think about it, write about it. Think about it. Talk to your sisters about this. Don't just talk to white women. Talk to white women about this. How the attitude of that lady, how does that play out if she's a teacher, counselor, coach, judge? Like, how does that play? She lived out a reality. And to my brothers, white, non-Black, otherwise, have some real talks with each other. How did this happen on our watch? And when this is said and done, we're not only going to be asked how we handle COVID-19, but how did we handle the issues that COVID-19 unveiled? All right, you all? So, believe it or not, if those of you who have not had enough of Black like me, because I'm still Black. And so I'm coming back here in like 20 minutes. I'm talking with author Harry Hawkins, who is an Afrofuturist, and he's talking about his book, Lies of the Demigods. Oh, yeah, we're going to go into it. And this, wow. We're going to tell you how you can get it. This brother is probably the newest author in Madison. What's it about? It's about, we're going to find out. Come on back at 8:30 and we're going to show you what it's about. It's about lies and demigods. That's what it's about. We're going to stare at the embers. We're going to stir. You see how you tried to trick me, Chad? So you see, I got to watch white people and Black people. You tried to trick me on that. Come on.
I got kids, man. I might come in late. So I'm trying to get.
Listen, you an artist. You drop your songs. What's that song about? Hey, Anthony, last thing. If you where can people go to get your music? You just dropped a new article. Anthony's one of my favorite artists, talented artists. Where can they go to get your music now?
So I say this too. I was like, if you want to help, like you want to support, my message is all about hope. My message is all about justice, like being a voice for the voiceless. So if you want to help me widen my platform, you can just search ANTDA, the Hope Boy. So that's ANTDAHOPEBOY on every music platform that's out there. And you'll find my new music that just came out. It's real stuff. Like I don't talk about anything that I haven't experienced, but the difference is I talk about where I come from, but I'm always looking at where I'm trying to go, where we're trying to go. And so where we're trying to go, even from this place that we're talking about now, is to somewhere better, somewhere where Black people could just wake up and be.
Got you, man.
Like
how
just
many tracks are on your new album?
So just 2 albums I put out right now.
You
so
re-released one, then you have a new one.
Yep. There's the re-release has 10 tracks. The new one has 9 tracks. So that's 19 tracks of realness for you to listen to. And
right. And
I'm telling you can.
I know you ain't shy. Is there a line in one of them that you can drop in like 10 seconds that's pertinent to anything that's going on in the world today?
The truth is, the way to something new is revolution. That's backed by the fact that we have a constitution. So don't be scared. Go get prepared, because a change gonna come when we bang that drum.
This has been Black Like Me Live. My special guest has been Mr. Chad Melton from Minnesota, a fellow pastor. I'm part of the Covenant Church, and Anthony Ward, A.N.T., the Hope Boy, because he's not peddling dope, he's peddling hope. This has been great. Every Thursday through the rest of May and June, at 8:30. I'm not doing a 6:30. This got me tired. Got a brother tired. But every Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Put it in your calendars. Take care.
Ooh, Black Like Me.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at www.alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.